Do you think Indian education is lacking somewhere?
Fear of failure is much less there.
Investing in any business in Silicon Valley, if they have failed, so still they reconsider them?
There are innumerable examples of people.
Private equities are more interested in investing in the healthcare sector.
My family had one of the oldest soft drinks companies in the country called Duke's. In the early 1990s, our family decided to sell the business to PepsiCo.
How do private equities try to create values post their investment?
In the private equity industry, where the real work starts after your check has gone into the company.
Since India already has become fourth largest economy and our Prime Minister's vision about India 2047 being a developed nation.
Very, very competently and well-run industries, and hence that's why we're seeing increased flows come into India.
Thank you, sir, for sparing out a time for me and being my first guest at this podcast. Just to begin with, was just trying to understand more about you at a deeper level. Who has been your mentor or influencer since the very beginning and you took your inspiration from?
So, Yash, thank you very much for having me on the show. I must say, to answer your first question, I've been fortunate that over time, I've had a number of mentors who have helped me grow and learn and develop in the various jobs that I've had. When I started my career in the soft drinks business in India, my father was my first mentor and taught me about the business that we were in. When I got into private equity, in the very early days of private equity, I worked with a gentleman called Pradeep Shah, who was one of the founders of the private equity industry in India. And it was a great experience to be learning with him. Thereafter, I was with the IDFC Private Equity Fund, where I was fortunate to have worked under Mr. Deepak Parekh, who continues as a mentor and an inspiration for many of us in the financial services industry. And also my good friend Luis Miranda, who has been a mentor for me in many ways. And then finally, when I joined and was part of the new Silk Route Fund that was set up to invest in India, there were three individuals, all very eminent individuals, who were strong mentors for me. Rajat Gupta, Parag Saxena, who was the CEO of the fund, and Mr. Victor Menezes. And I'm grateful to all of them for the time that they've spent with me and what they've taught me.
Oh, great, sir. What is one lesson which you might carry from one of your mentor, which you think has helped you to take some decisions which are specifically to your business or your personal decisions, and which has been your thorough motivational inspiration?
I think if I look at the cross section of learnings that I have from all of these wonderful people, I think what comes to mind is that it's really important to develop your own working style such that you're always prepared to really work hard, be humble, be prepared for what you're doing, and try and keep learning. And I think those are some of the what I would state as very important for success.
So I think that was great. Coming back to your moreover of your graduation per se, you completed your graduation from Harvard and then had done your MBA from Chicago Booth School, right? So do you think that these business schools, specifically from the US, have an impact of your evaluation, your early days in the private equity or for evaluating businesses in India?
Yes, I would say that doing an MBA from Chicago, which is a very rigorous analytical program, and prior to that doing a bachelor's from Harvard, I think it's very helpful because they provide you with a framework for thinking through situations where all the data is not complete, and they give you tools and techniques of how to evaluate problems, how to try and problem solve, and look to the future to meet the objectives that the business that you're looking at requires. So I got a lot of benefit from being part of these institutions.
So how do you think there's a difference between Indian business schools and the US business schools in terms of MBA and their approach?
So I think maybe the US business schools use a little bit more of the case method and a little bit more of participation from real world companies that give projects to the students and maybe the Indian schools. But the Indian business schools are also now becoming very good. They're churning out really high quality, talented people who are ready to become the leaders of business in India today and tomorrow.
Great. I think one point which I really like about the USB schools is that their alumni or their founders, they come on occasionally basically, or on every month or so. they come and visit the school and give the lectures of how they have done so big in the industry post their graduation, or they try to teach you. Say, for example, there's a series of Y Combinator given by Sam Altman, where they try to showcase how to build a startup, right? And this is they give this series, they launched this series in Stanford. So I think that is some sort of a differentiating factor which Indian B schools still lack per se, where the founders or the alumni of the business schools are not yet giving their thought processes or nurturing the younger generations, the younger students.
Yeah, you're right in many ways. One of the, I think, notable features of the education system in the US, whether it's the business school or it's the undergrad college, is the involvement and participation of alumni. And involvement and participation both financially as well as non-financially in terms of time and effort that they give to developing the student body there.
Correct. So, do you think Indian education is lacking somewhere or the other when it comes to, a theoretical approach and practical approach, the mindset or the stigma or the stagma of the failure per se, where marks are considered more important rather than developing a thought process to build something?
Yeah. No, I don't think the Indian education system is really lacking. It's in itself a very good education system. And if you see the quality of graduates that are churned out from the top schools in India, they're as good as any globally. But I think if you were to learn from the US educational model, there certainly is the benefit that they have more of an interdisciplinary approach. They have more of an involvement with the external corporate world. And this whole fear of failure is much less there. In fact, I often like to say why probably the best startup ecosystem in the world is in Silicon Valley. And the big differentiator there, in addition to having a whole host of talented people, is that there is absolutely no stigma of failure. If your business has failed, and of course, failed because of business reasons and not for the wrong moral or ethical reasons, for business reasons, then there is no stigma. In fact, many cases it's considered to be a benefit in that you've got the experience, and now when you go back into your second or third innings, you're considered to be that much more experienced and more intelligent in terms of what to do in uncertain situation.
Wow. So, do you think that investors investing in any business in Silicon Valley, if they have failed, so still they reconsider them for their next venture?
There are innumerable examples of people who failed in one venture, then gone on and set up another venture, and once again attracted investments and have gone on to be very successful. So yes, absolutely.
Wow. Also, just trying to understand more of, you just mentioned that Indian education system is developing and is evolved and is different in its own aspect, right? But still, when we see in terms of employment or or the brightest minds in India are still going outside. Say, for example, there's a huge chunk of IIT Bombay grads, the best institute in India, going abroad, going into the US per se or UK for finding more opportunities. Why do you think is this a major? What do you think is the major reason for this?
Yeah, over the last, I would say, decade or two, this issue of brain drain, or where some of our best and brightest of our graduates want to then go overseas for further studies and to go overseas to get for better job prospects, that has been an issue. But I think I'm very glad to observe that that's actually reversing over the in recent past. And because of the way the Indian economy has developed, because of the numerous opportunities in India, because of the fact that compensation structures have now improved and are comparable with the West, we're seeing more and more people who've gone overseas actually come back. So I'm hopeful we'll now see a process of a reverse brain drain, where the best and brightest of the Indian talent will now, after having gone overseas, after having been very successful overseas, will now come back to India and create value in the Indian context.
I think you're right. But still, do you think that people are coming back to India more over their personal agendas of, missing their families? Or do you really think that there are opportunities being created in India far more?
I think it's a combination, right? You can't live in isolation. You come back because you enjoy having your friends and family and a familiar living standard to come back to. And at the same time, you want professional opportunity to stretch yourself and to grow and to develop. And I think because we're seeing a lot more opportunity, we're having people come back because then they also have the added benefit of having a family and a familiar surrounding to come back to.
Fair. I think, don't you think that government should also play a big role in this sector? Like we have seen in China. China has started 1,000 Talents program where they try to attract their Chinese talents sitting in the US to come back to China. They are given more grants to them, better R&D facilities to innovate, better policies, better compensation structures. Do you think government should also play a role in this to reverse the migration?
Yes, of course, the government can and has played a big role. And I'd like to compliment that, initiatives like Startup India, etc., have really shown that the government of India is standing behind the startup ecosystem and encouraging people to come in and participate in the startup sector. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. An example that I like to give very often is that if you look at Israel, Israel is a very small country, but has seen a huge amount of technology startups come up. And the reason for that is the government actually funds a lot of these startups under the premise that if your startup does well, you repay us. If it doesn't, it's payable when able. That's the kind of encouragement that they give. And of course, they've seen the benefit to their economy in terms of the cutting edge businesses they've come to deal with. And I think in India, we will really, like we've seen success in the services economy, we will continue to see a lot more success in the broader technology space, amongst other spaces, consumer, infrastructure, manufacturing, etc. So I think we are really in many ways in India at an inflection point, and hopefully we will see a lot stronger growth as we become one of the largest and fastest growing economies in the world.
Sure. Don't you think that India's population crisis or there's a huge population issue in India, though we have certain pros where we try to say that we don't have an aging population, we have the highest working
Young
population in India. So I think we have some pros and we have our cons also. So how do you think that government will be able to develop startup ecosystem in India to the level where they try to create businesses, sustainable business models out of India?
I think first and foremost is education. And I think as long as more and more emphasis is given on not just having a quality educational system, but an educational system that reaches out to more and more people, not only in the cities, but in the towns and in the villages, that will result in a huge talent pool for companies to draw on. And once that happens, I think it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. We will see successful business come up. The successful businesses that come up are often inspirations for the younger generation who come up. And we've already seen that happen. We'll see more and more of that happen. And allied with that, I think I'm very happy to note that my industry that I'm from, the private equity and venture capital industry, has played a big role in funding, investing, handholding the whole startup and young company ecosystem in India today, where private equity and venture capital is seen as a very well established asset class in India.
Absolutely true, and agree to this, sir. Coming to the private equity, specifically your industry, as you rightly mentioned, how do you think has private equity evolved in India over the years? So in past 2024, we have seen a lot of IPO. There's a huge slump in the IPOs in India because of which the private equity deals in 2025 are expected to be huge. Is this going to be a buyer's market per se, where private equity would be able to invest at a very favorable valuations?
So let me answer the first part of your question. I've been a part of this industry since the early days, probably one of the earliest people in the industry when I joined in the early 1990s. In those days, it was a very small, relatively unknown cottage industry. And it's been good to see the way that this industry has developed in the last 2 to 3 decades and has grown dramatically in terms of amount of capital available to deploy, in terms of number of professionals, in terms of number of deals done. In every which way, this industry has grown very strongly and in a very positive manner for the Indian economy. In fact, over the last decade, if you look back, there have been various points in time where more of the equity capital requirements for corporate India have been funded by private equity and venture capital than by the capital markets. If you were to make this statement even a decade ago, people would have laughed, but that has been a reality over the distant past. So I'm very happy and proud to see the very substantial role that private equity and venture capital has played in the development of the corporate ecosystem in India. Even if you look at the numbers in the last decade in terms of the amount invested in private equity and venture capital, we're now from the early days. I remember in the early 2000s, even if you had about $1 billion of equity capital come into the system, that was a big year for private equity and venture capital in India. Now, if you look at the last 5 years or the last 10 years, consistently we've had 25, 30, $40 million or more. In fact, I think 2021 or 22, if my memory serves me right, was the peak year with about $65 billion of invested capital in Indian private equity and venture capital. So this industry has now really come to stay and will occupy a very important role in the overall corporate ecosystem in India.
True that. There's a huge surge in the healthcare investments also. Uh, why do you think that private equities are more interested in investing in the healthcare sector? Is it because of post COVID, where we have realized that India doesn't have this ecosystem or the infrastructure in place, specifically in terms of healthcare? As we see that during the COVID era, during the COVID period, there was a huge crisis. The system had almost collapsed. Do you think this is one of the reason where the private equities are trying to create healthcare system in India?
So healthcare globally has been one of the sectors that has attracted the most significant amount of private equity funding and venture capital funding globally. And I think India is no exception. There's a great need for healthcare, for hospitals, for clinics, for education institutions that teach medical and healthcare practices. And I think it will continue to remain a very strong growth area in India. Allied to that, we're also going to see a lot of activity in the consumer sector because of India's vast population, vast young population, and now the fact that in an instant, a youngster in India knows exactly what is happening to his counterpart in the Western markets because of the internet and information proliferation. The consumer sector is also going to see a lot of activity. Similarly, manufacturing is also going to see a lot of activity. I personally believe that in some cases, if we get our act right, India can be one of the global manufacturing hubs for various sectors. So in a lot of these, whether it's healthcare, whether it's consumer, whether it's manufacturing, I think we're well poised to have a very important role to play in the global pecking order.
Great. Which is your most favorite sector in terms of the consumer space, where you are much keen and interested in?
Yeah, I think the consumer space has a lot of potential in India. I started my career in the beverages space, so I always have a soft corner for various beverage products. But I think broadly in that vein, the branded packaged food and beverage product segment in India, industry in India is just poised for growth. We've seen a lot of growth, whether it's in health food, whether it's in snack foods, whether it's in ready to serve foods, whether it's in tea, coffee, beverages. Across the spectrum, we've seen a lot of activity, and I think that we will continue to see a lot of activity as A, affordability improves, and B, information improves about health and hygiene and taste and what is available out there in the market. So all of these, I think, have seen very strong growth.
So, as you mentioned, your interest lies in beverages. Just before this podcast, I was researching about you. When it comes to the your venture, you were into beverages for Dukes, right? Dukes were one of your beverages. Can you just throw some light about what was it exactly? What was your venture about?
So my family had one of the oldest soft drinks companies in the country called Dukes. And we had a lot of brands that were very popular. We had a soda, we had a Mangola, which is a mango drink. We had a lemonade. We had a raspberry. All of these were very popular, and even if I may say so myself, some of them were iconic brands at in the regional market space in India. And they grew and did well. And in the early 1990s, our family decided to sell the business to PepsiCo. And after that, I somewhat fortuitously got into what was then a very young, unknown cottage industry called private equity. And I feel very fortunate to have been part of the entire journey of private equity from the early 1990s till today.
True that. Just to understand more about private equities, it is not just about writing checks and then investing and getting out of it, being the exit. The real moot point lies in value creation, right? Can you just explain or throw some light about what exactly is value creation? Is it in terms of processes, people, or product? How do private equities try to create values post their investment?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And there is a saying in the private equity industry where the real work starts after your check has gone into the company. And the idea really is that once you've identified an industry sector in which you want to invest in, within that you've identified a company that you want to invest in, then the nature of the business is such that you would typically want to work closely with that company to add value to the company wherever possible, so that at the appropriate time it can then be sold to the next buyer and you can maximize your value in the business. And I think private equity overall has done a good job in working with the entrepreneurs to add value. And some examples of that is that, as I've seen in many of the companies that we have been involved in over the years, we've helped them recruit key people. We've helped them set up systems and processes. We've helped them raise additional equity funding or additional debt funding. We've helped them evaluate various M&A options. We've brought in experts that aid and improve their operational systems. So in many ways, when you look at private equity, more than an investor, we often consider ourselves to be partners with the entrepreneur in which we invest. And the whole idea is to add value to the companies that you invest in, be seen as a value-added investor. That's the basis of private equity.
True that. Can you give one prime example in your private equity days where you had invested into some business and then tried to, for the purpose of value creation, you try to create it through the process, product, or acquisition, as you rightly said?
So, there are many examples because in the funds that I have been involved with over the last 2 decades, the model has been to work with private equity. So if you look at the consumer space, we worked with beverage companies, we worked with food companies, we worked with an ice cream company, we worked with a bottled water company where we've tried and helped them grow and develop the business. If you look in the manufacturing space, we've worked with numerous companies. So I think that has been a part of the model, and we don't have time, but I'd love to at some stage take you through various companies and the different ways of adding value. But the root is that once you've invested, you have to create a very strong relationship with the entrepreneur that you back. Once you have the strong relationship and the entrepreneur realizes that you can be of value to the business beyond providing a check, that relationship becomes very strong, and really 1 + 1 gets to 3 then.
True that. But were there situations where there is a difference of opinion between the promoter or the founder and the investor?
Always, right? Don't you have differences of opinion with your wife? Don't you have difference of opinion with your parents, your brothers? I mean, this happens everywhere. The important thing is to be able to work together to go through the differences and come into a consensus and a common solution. And very often it is these disagreements and this difference of opinion that actually lead to people going deeper into a problem and coming with better solutions that work better in the long run. So I think it's actually helpful for the whole process of value creation.
Right. I think making smart people work together is the best part of if somebody could do that.
It's also difficult, but yes, it is the best part.
True that. Just trying to understand at your investment thesis, when you try to invest personally into some venture, do you focus more on the founder, the person, or the product per se?
See, I think in private equity, at least typically when you want to make an investment decision and you've identified the company that you're looking at, you have to look at a number of things. You can't say it's just one or the other. And if I can say in a nutshell, what do we look at? First and foremost, we have to have absolute comfort with the people that we are backing. The entrepreneur has to be someone that you have comfort is not only very confident, but has high level of integrity. One without the other is not enough. You need both, again, competence as well as integrity. Secondly, you have to have comfort with the business model. The business has to be sustainable over a period of time as well as scalable. Again, one without the other doesn't work. So understanding what drives the business, what are the risks associated with the business, what can be done better in the business is very important. Hence, it's important to really go deep to understand what that business is all about. Thirdly, when we invest, it's also important to look at the deal terms. Are we getting in at the right price? You may be buying a great business, but if you're overpaying for that business, your ability to generate the returns that you target will be limited. So you got to make sure that you get the right price, you get the right terms, you're able to exit when you want. And finally, and possibly the most important aspect in our business is, even more than the investing, is the exiting. It's easier to put money in. The greater challenge is to take your money back out with the kind of returns that you seek and in the manner that you want. So working towards an exit from the early days of the investment is a very important part of the overall investment.
You just mentioned that investing right at right price is important and it's an art. Just trying to understand from a layman's language, how can you define investing at the right price? Because the forecasting is very uncertain. It all depends upon you may be, for example, investing at rupees 100 in a particular venture, understanding, forecasting that this might lead to thousands. But there are a lot of uncertainties involved, be it geopolitics, be it current business environment, be it change in the taste and preferences. So how do you think is the right price being defined?
See, there's always risks associated with this business, right? One of the cardinal rules of economics is that the more the risks, the greater the returns. If there's no risk, you won't get any additional returns. And I think the idea really is to invest in businesses that you understand well. So if you understand the business well, you can come up with what you think are a realistic set of projections for the years going ahead. And based on that, you attribute a price to the business. Ultimately, it is a judgment call. But if you get that judgment right, then of course you will get the returns. But if you get that judgment wrong, and one of the things where people go most often wrong in our business is often you invest in a good business, but you pay a price that is in excess of what is a fair price. And that leads to problems.
So, coming back to the markets, right? India has been able to build world-class IT, exceptional IT firms, be it TCS, Infosys, Wipro, but they are still a back office, right? We have still not created an IP out of India. Say, for example, some founder or some entrepreneur sitting out of Indore wants to build Apple or Microsoft. It's yet not done. Why do you think? What are the possible reasons for the same? And how can somebody try to do this?
So you're right. India, from a technology perspective, has been known as a services economy. We have created some of the highest growth, most successful IT services companies in the world. The names that you've taken, whether it's TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, etc., etc. And I think that will continue because we've always had a large pool of talented, educated engineering workforce that is able to write code for companies that need this overseas at prices that are better than overseas. So there has been some element of a price arbitrage. Of course, over time, that price arbitrage is reducing. And I think also over time, we're seeing a lot more people now that are also looking to create IP and looking to create product technology companies. And over time, I'm sure we will see that. The Indian brain is second to none in this world. We've seen that. The competence of the average educated Indian is as good as anyone in the world. So over time, we will also see this migration upwards from services business to product businesses, but that will take more time.
Fair. When it comes to businesses, right, I think the most wonderful business that I have seen in my entire life is IPL, right? What a framework and ecosystem being built. And I think BCCI is now the world's richest cricket body through IPL. Why can't India develop when we try to see towards the US, right? We have NBAs, NFLs, lot of sports games and a lot of good infrastructure. So understanding businesses at much a deeper level, sports in US is $1 billion businesses, right? We have NBA, we have baseball, we have NFLs. Why can't in India there can be a sports ecosystem or the sports businesses when we say India is doing great in IPLs, but apart from IPL, there is no such sports involved. I think Pro Kabaddi League (PKL) is trying to gear up its game, but still there is yet to be a lot of things to be reached. What do you think are we lacking in terms of? Is it because of the infrastructure or solely because of people's taste and preferences?
So having been a sports person all my life, I'm passionate about sports. And you're right, nowhere in the world has there been as successful a league, various leagues in the US, the NFL, the NBA, the baseball league, etc. In India also, we're beginning to develop our leagues. But in India, it's very clear, as a sports lover, it's very clear that cricket is a religion. Cricket is the number one sport, the number two sport, the number three sport, and then after that, the other sports come. So the BCCI has done a great job in developing the IPL. The IPL today is one of the most successful sports leagues in the world. And they've done such a great job that if you study the economics in any year, even the team that comes last in that year in the IPL will make a profit.
Correct.
Because of the fantastic deal that they've been able to structure in terms of media rights. Now, IPL is a learning experience for all other sports. And I'm sure in other sports we'll also find it. But I think it's very hard to imagine that there'll be any other league of this size in India and any other sport. Because, as I said, cricket is in a league of its own in the sporting universe in India. But having said that, Kabaddi is developing a league. Badminton has had some success in a league. Football is developing leagues. So on a smaller basis, we will see leagues develop. But more than the leagues, I think it's also important we'll see certain very iconic tournaments and competitions that will develop over time. So if you look at tennis, for example, look at Wimbledon. What would be the value of Wimbledon? It would be incredible. So can there be tournaments like that can be developed in India? In fact, one event that comes to mind is the Mumbai Marathon now. Mumbai Marathon is
Yeah.
over 15 years old and has grown over time and has really become a very sought after standalone event in its own right. Like that, we will also see a number of events in addition to leagues. And I think as a sports lover, I'd really love to see more and more activity, commercial activity in the sports domain.
Yeah, I just researched about you. You are a national level squash player, right?
That's right, in my younger days.
Your younger days. Still younger days. So, has sports helped you in terms of decision making? In terms of your
Yes,
invest-
incredibly. In fact, I would, if I had to look back on my life, I would say being involved in competitive sports all my life has been a parallel education. It has taught you how to win. It has taught one, more importantly, how to lose and how to learn from the losses and how to become better from losses that you take. Because in the game of life, you will win some and you will lose some, but you cannot get overly elated when you win something or overly dejected when you lose something. You got to keep moving ahead. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is that in life, it's not important how hard you hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving ahead that counts. And I think,
Wow.
life resembles a lot of that.
So you have met hundreds and thousands of founders before investing. What are some of the red or the green flags which come into during your first initial meeting with them, where you feel that, okay, this is right or wrong?
Having met hundreds and hundreds of founders and hundreds of businesses, I think it's very important early on to get an assessment of the makeup of the entrepreneur, because ultimately, what are you doing in this business? You're backing an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur has to strike you, A, with his passion, but more than passion, also the knowledge of the business. Understand the nuts and bolts of the business. Without a deep knowledge of the business, you will be in trouble if you back that entrepreneur. And hence, that is something that you got to keep questioning and cross-questioning to try and get a sense of their knowledge. And then also their resilience, their tenacity, their people quality. In addition to knowledge, it's also very important that they have the right value systems. And I cannot emphasize enough how important that is. Because ultimately, as I had said earlier, to back successful entrepreneurs, you need people who are not only competent, but also people who have very high integrity. Without strong value systems, it's very hard to achieve long-term success. So I think those are some of the initial criteria that one looks at. And then over time, it's important to get to know the entrepreneur you're backing as well as you can. Because once you know his strengths, you know his weaknesses, you can be a very strong ally and a partner in their journey towards success. So I think that's important.
So there is a lot of discussion or debate going in our generation where people try to have a work-life balance, and some say they want to work 70 hours a week as they are obsessed about what they're trying to create. What's your take on that?
So I must admit, I'm more of the old school in that regard. While I admit there is definitely value in trying to create a work-life balance, I think especially in your younger years or when you're building a career, work has to be the most important thing that you do. And if it entails working 70 hours a week, so be it. I cannot think of too many successful entrepreneurs or too many successful businessmen who built successful businesses without working literally 24/7. I think it has to be your passion. It has to drive you. And without that drive, it's very hard to succeed. So I think, while work-life balance is important, I think you have to be prepared to work as long as it takes to achieve success.
What should a young person chase? Passion, what they're good at, or they should chase money or the opportunity where it lies? What's your view on this?
I think what we've learned from various examples over the many years that one has been in this industry is that for entrepreneurs that follow their passion and are involved in businesses that they enjoy and they love, do the best, because then it's not work. They're following their passion. They're understanding the nuts and bolts of that business and developing that business. And I think if you do that and you create value, the money will come. I don't think you should go into a business think of making money. Go into business think of creating a solid long-term enterprise, and the value will follow.
Since India has started becoming, or already has become, the world's fourth largest economy, and our Prime Minister's vision about India 2047 being a developed nation, where do you think are we standing today, and how quickly would we able to meet this vision?
I think we are well along our path, and I think in many ways I'd like proudly say that we are now almost or as much a developed economy as a developing economy. We've got leading companies in various industries. In many ways, the eyes of the investing world is on India. People realize that India has a magic portion of a large market, many consumers, but also very, very competently and well-run industries. And hence, that's why we're seeing increased flows coming to India, as we touched upon earlier. So, to my mind, we are well on our way to becoming one of the largest economies in the world.
But we do lack in terms of infrastructure, right? Where there are certain policies, infrastructure issues, policy issues. I think there's a part and parcel of being from a developing to developed nation, and we are coping up well. But what are certain key issues or major challenges per se we feel that, you feel that we need to overcome, be a developed nation like the US?
So one of those definitely is to have world-class infrastructure, and I think we are getting there. We have always been, because we've been a high-growth economy, the state of our infrastructure has always not kept pace with that level, and we need to keep pace. But if you look at some of the success stories, look at the success story in roads now. I think we're constructing more kilometers of roads than any other economy in the world. I believe a decade and a half ago, India was doing on average 2 to 4 kilometers per day. Today, we're at, like, my mind, some many times that number. So I think that is being seen. Our ports, some of our container ports, our bulk ports are doing very well. So our infrastructure, a lot still needs to be done, but it's good to see that a lot has been done. And people are recognizing that. Foreigners coming to India see the Indian airports, world-class airport. So we're very optimistic that pace of growth in the infrastructure sector will continue to match what is required for India to become a leading world-class economy.
Great. So coming to my last segment, sir, what would you say to your younger self, at the age of 28 to 30, like I am right now? What would be the one piece of advice you would like to give to your younger self and to the young budding entrepreneurs?
So, recognize that life and your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a long duration. And for that long duration, you have to have patience. You have to always be prepared. And you always should try and learn whatever you can learn with utmost humility. I think if you can put that in place, you will find your calling and you will do well.
Oh, great. Lastly, any 2 books you would like to recommend to, young budding entrepreneurs which they should read?
Yes, I would say, rather than say any 2 books, I would say, life is very busy today. We're always busy, but take time out and read. There's so much we suffer from information overload, actually, if you look at the internet and the books. But if you take time out and read autobiographies, read stories about business, read stories about people who've done very distinguished things in life. And I think there'll be a lot of learning from that. However busy you are, don't ignore that aspect.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you for sparing time and giving your wonderful thought processes, your wonderful advices to people like us.
Always welcome.